Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, good evening. Welcome to Nature Echoes. This is Sunday, 2nd of July, 2023. So thank you for joining me now or later, because most people seem to be watching this as an archive, which I appreciate whichever way you watch this. This is our weekly time of echoing news, stories, poetry, and art, and connecting this to nature folklore and our precious water, holy wells, woodlands, hedges, and wildlife. So hail, hail, hole, and holy good health for you all for today and through the week. Now, through this edition, I'm going to be focusing on the folklore of crossroads, and that you've got something in the background for me there. And yeah, just bring up the title logo there. And as you see, I'm going to have two echoes beyond the crossroads. That's quite a long echo. But druid is a starling. That's a short echo I'm going to commence with. So I trust you're going to find that very interesting. And I'll also include the latest with what's happening with journaling folklore and the course and other news of what I'm doing on Substack. And as usual, this is Nature Echoes Live, plus the growing nature folklore video articles, photos library, and journaling nature folklore course modules are all brought to you due to the support of kind subscribers such as yourselves. And that's the link there to the Substack work that I do. There's a free subscription tier there, and you get access to at least 40 very informative nature folklore articles a year that I post up. And if you upgrade to become a support subscriber, that includes my journaling nature folklore course of 20 course modules a year. And you can join in anytime because the journaling nature folklore course is a revolving course, not a linear one. And you get the latest updates added each year onto the module to give it a bit of a boost from the year before. So it's a solar cycle that course does. And as soon as possible, I'm going to get going with the 4 seasonal online live workshops a year. And we're going to work on getting you around here live as well to meet each other. The initial cost, €5 a month, or you could go for 50% discount of €30 a year, whatever that is in your currency. So thank you for your support, subscribers. That's why I'm still broadcasting, because I do have, like everything, increasing monthly subscriptions to pay to keep this on the air. Now I've got the survival pledge drive sorted out. Let's see which early birds have joined us. And I see there's a few of you here. A few coming in from the YouTube here. Thank you, sir. Taking my seat from S. Lee there. Lovely to have you. I've got No Autumn here, who's going to be catching up later, and a lot of people say do that. And Claire, who's actually in another room in the cottage here, and looking forward to the lovely story. So thank you very much for that great start. Lovely to see you are watching here. I'm going to go for the first one, and I'm going to get the picture up for this. It'll explain it. I almost didn't get this one up. I haven't got any other pictures for this, but I think this will show you what I'm going to be talking about. Look at that. Druid. Druid, meaning starling. But that's not true for 6. You might have seen this picture. It's amazing illustrations. Wildlife, one of the beautiful wildlife illustrations that has been put together by Lisa Marie over the last few months. Unfortunately, I did do an interview with her, and the interview suddenly got wiped out. We don't know. So I'm going to get back to her for this. But as you see what she's got there, this is one of the darker ones, but there's some text explaining the Irish and the Gaelic interpretations of the wildlife that she features in her illustration. Man called Mangan, he's a huge fan of Lisa Marie's work, and he has really helped her along a bit by recommending her work to other people as an extension for learning the language. And wonderful illustrations, well deserved as well. But there you have this week's Lisa's illustration. This is a starling bird. I think many people, when you think of the starlings, you start thinking, and sorry I haven't got any more pictures up of this, because I'd love to put some pictures up of the starlings doing the mystical murmuring flights close to sunset. But you're probably very familiar with those anyway. And in the Scottish Gaelic, the word druid Now, I got that album from a different place. So in the Scottish Gaelic, the word druid, it seems to translate simply as starling. Doesn't come out as a thing that you might think of as a druid. But I think that translation direct to starling is actually modern, and it's been shortchanged a bit. The word starling itself is interesting in its own right because it comes from an old sort of Dane, Germanic, Saxon words. In fact, all three cultures have got a similar variation of the same word. It's stare. Stare. And stare, I think that's how it's pronounced, and that's describing a smooth, well-controlled maneuver. And even W.B. Yeats described the starling in one of his lines, I'm not sure which poem, a starer's nest at my window is what he says. And he's talking about starling that's there. Now, if we go to the Irish and consider what druid is, it actually describes the starling because a lot of the words tell a story anyway. It's not like our Latinized words that tell things. So the druid is kind of telling a story, looking at the Irish, of their closeness in flight, which is obviously the murmuring. So where does this put the druid word that we're more familiar with and that we use quite a lot today, including the very tiny popular branding of the Order of the Bards, Ovates and Druids? It's certainly not the Bards, Ovates and Starlings to Obod. But a starling seems very removed from images, doesn't it? It's very removed from those bearded staff-waving men wearing the white cloaks and looking for mistletoe in the oak trees. I think it could be quite a shock for some people that it translates out as starling because they look nothing like them. I like that translation because I've always been uncomfortable with the druid word myself. And I think in my discomfort, it was inherited from my father's family, a lot of it, because they loathe the word druid themselves, especially when people called them druids. They didn't like it at all. And I can't remember their explanation of why they found that offensive, but I know this was in the 50s, they were very uptight about Robert Graves and Gerald Gardner of Wicca. So somehow I think their association of the word druid was something connected to what they thought of those two, and the people coming together at Stonehenge, because Stonehenge in the mid-50s was kind of getting rebuilt and it was taking a whole new culture, I suppose. Anyway, to me, the druid word, it seemed to be totally off. So here's a moment where I'm going to be looking into a bunch of these mystic lads, and certainly women of the more recent years, and do some wordplay and relate to prompts and symbols to try and get around this druid thingy. Now, an Irish word that's more a description of these mystic men and women is a word for magic and mysticism, which is Droicht, D-R-A-I-O-C-H-T. Some say Droicht. I think Droicht is the most common pronunciation anyway. And that's a person practicing mystical stuff, a person who is a druid, a druid. I think it's pronounced. So druid is the actual mysticism, and the druid is the person and that actually practices it. And that's spelled, sorry I haven't got this on the screen, I was intending to, but it's D-R-A-O-I, that's in the Irish. But that's not likely to be an ancient word either. And it's probably something that came out of the 19th century Celtic Romance time, during that age. But I think a lot of us are familiar with an older one, which isn't pronounced much different, Drui, which is D-R-U-I. And that seems to be much more going into the ancient times, but it's not pronounced that much different, really, is it? So, sorry, everything's freezing up here. Anyway, the Druid word seems to have crossed over the water from Wales. And if I suggest that, I do this a few times, like with some of the own words, and when you make those suggestions here, it doesn't go down too well because it's toppling the quest for Irish identity, which a lot of these words are definitely crowded around to do. But the word, the Welsh had a lovely word. They had a word that was called druids. They may still have it. If we put it into a Latin alphabet, it's D-R-U-I-D-S. W-I-T-S, druids. And their Druid word, it seems to have evolved from the Brittany tradition, because anybody who follows the language seems to have sort of higgledy-piggledy from the Hindu across the Kurdish languages through Turkey, up through Iberia, Brittany. Brittany is where it seemed to take shape, and then on to Cornwall, on to Wales, and then up the west coast of what's now England, into Pictland in Scotland. And that word, druids, in some way similar, has probably moved in the same direction. But the Brittany version seems to also have changed, where in Brittany somehow there was a mashup of the word deru, which is something you may be more familiar with. And deru actually means firm, solid, and steadfast. And that word, I think, drifted through the Hindu and Kurdish traditions. And if you think of the description and you think of druids, as you might call them, and deru, meaning firm, solid, and steadfast, it doesn't take much imagination to start imagining a vintage, tall, strong oak tree. And that's the word, that's the reference that seems to have come through Hindu and the Kurdish, because it was a word to describe that tree, because they didn't have a specific name like we do. And deru, it became known as daru with the A, and then dara, and in Ireland we have the Kildara for Kildare, and Dara, which Derry, also up in Northern Ireland there. And another word that travelled through cultures with deru was wid, which actually means to see and to know, use our third eye maybe. It's really about the action, the deed of perceiving and using wisdom. And wid actually even turned into wit. And that became part of the very unfortunate witch word. Now, deru and wid together in the Kurdish and other Middle Eastern ancient traditions, I know Lebanese is one of them, became what we may pronounce as derivid, where the wid was changed to vid. And we still have that word as we use it in video and in really related to vision as well. So it's funny how as we Latinize all of these pronunciations, how they became connected. But somehow derivid became heard of as derivit, and then somehow it's druids. And druids, I think, is what Caesar picked up on, really. And we translate what Caesar wrote as being druids, when in fact what he was trying to write down was druids, C-R-E-W-I-T-S. That's what I believe happened. But we're still left with the wonder of what has the oak tree got to do with all of this, even though the tales we know of druids and oaks seem to be very tightly coupled together. And it's as if druid or drui is describing the knower of the oak. That's, as a child, that's what I always believed. That one of my first imaginary perceptions was of an oak tree, and the oak tree containing hundreds of our ancestors within. And even as a child, I was attempting to write poetry around this. But a few things that may honor this perception is, and they're obvious things in a way. One is the amount of water that an oak contains, a mature oak. It can actually soak up to 300 gallons of water a day, apparently. Colossal amount, unbelievable in a way. And for those who are regular supporters of Nature Folklore and Nature Echoes, they know that my own belief is that our spirit returns to water, and water, spirit, and life are all one, all the same. And I imagine that all up into the oak tree, 300 gallons a day of it. And then add to that, the insects, number of insects in an oak is phenomenal. It's way over 600 species of insects, and most of them exclusive to the oak tree, I believe. So that is very much a symbolism and a prompt to think, you think of all these types of insects. It doesn't take much imagination to think of all those insects being representative of the spirits and the ancestors within an oak tree. And I'm sure that as that word spread from Hindu land across the Middle East, people started imagining the same thing. That's what I feel. So it doesn't take much imagination to think of the oak tree as being a spirit holder, I don't think. And the other pointer is the oak is commonly believed as being the world tree. I know there's some traditions that say it's the elm, some say ash, some even say apple tree. But oak seems to be very popular as the idea of the as above, so below the world tree. Now, how an oak tree roots? Let's. I think it's about time for me to change a picture here. No, that's not one. God, no, the picture's not there. But how the oak tree roots, as you're familiar, it grows right down deep, very deep into the soil, down through the rock. It goes very deep, and the taproot goes lower than most trees. And by doing so, the roots are going to find deep, dark water of life right down below what any other living thing in the soil might be able to do. So this deep roots gives the oak tree sturdiness. It gives the oak tree extreme confidence in nature and all kind of regalness. And seemingly, as it grows tall, it's one of the highest trees. So it seems as if it's closer to the sun, the main capturer of light as well. And I find it's very easy to imagine a long-bearded man in a white cloak by an oak tree, waving his staff in unison to the murmuring dance of the starlings going overhead. So there we are. I'm bringing it all together there. So that's that echoes as much as I think I'll say on that. Let's see what you're saying about my bumblings there. We got Vinny here from Springfield, Montana. Is that right, Remo? Hope that's right. Fantastic. Rin. We live by the locker in here, Rin Musman. That's beautiful. Thanks very much. Lovely to get your feedback on that fairly quickly. So let's roll on to my main echo. And I got lots of photos for this one, so it should be a bit more entertaining for you. Beyond the crossroads. Now, my first thought of any crossroads, let's see if I get a picture. Am I ready for a picture with this one? I'm not sure. Anyway, my first thought at any crossroads, crossroads being a junction of various roads that meet, they may be regarded as just being a convenient bit of road planning. I think I can get a photo. There we go. There's a bit of very serious road planning with that crossroads there. And often after driving several miles or kilometers, a crossroads can be a welcome pause for a moment, and it can add interest to our drive. And perhaps a bit of relief when we see signs pointing to where we're wanting to go. So anyway, during ancient times, well before the network of roads that we have now, a crossroads was often quite a meeting place for people. The crossroads might be where the market was established, where trading was done. I know there's very famous stories of in Glendalough. Glendalough, you think, is fairly isolated. You'll be familiar with there, with a monastic city. But that was a very busy crossroads once upon a time, and that might be the motivation why it was there. Glen McNoy's was one, also similar, not only a crossroads, but there was a bridge built and they could charge tolls on that. And eventually you'll get villages and towns, and this is one with a very modernized Bank of Ireland that's a very busy crossroads where a village has actually been built on it. And here's one that's off the wall a bit. Here we go. We'll go to England. And there we go, looking over Avebury. And that has a sort of crossroads, a sort of stretched out crossroads. And there we go. You've got a village and a crossroads all within an ancient stone circle there. And quite fascinating, very busy crossroads that is too. Now in folklore, around the earth, crossroads are more than a meeting of roads, but spaces that are said to be veils between worlds. Now, local crossroads, yeah, they're sort of kind of sacred too, aren't they? But local crossroads are often accompanied with local stories where the invisible realms touch with our own. And this folklore is all over the world. Now, by being at the crossroads at specific times, this is how the folklore rolls. And I'm going to show some very good examples of this. But through tradition, if we're at crossroads at specific times, then we get the experience where we're neither here nor there. And we experience a kind of vortex of betwixt and between. And right now, we're not long beyond the point of Midsummer at present, and a lot of people regard more than ever Midsummer as like being a thin veil time, just like Bildner and so on being the most famous. So one of the so-called veil points of the year is when stories flow and also the music is flowing. Let's have a music. There we go. You'll be familiar with that fiddler there, I'm sure. And that's what happened around here nearby at Midsummer. But some mythology and religions, their teachings are that the crossroads, they hold very dark realms of entities. I wonder if this, I didn't mark all my pictures properly, so excuse my stuttering on this, but they arouse fears of such the appearance of the evil spirits of the crossroads and even the devil himself. And there's a man who is selling his soul to the devil, and you can see from he doesn't know he's the devil, but that illustration there is showing something in the shadow. And I find it actually remarkable. The devil is always, he always seems to be told of being male. And I'm going to talk more about the devil chap quite shortly. Though the old Christian church may have preached to us, warning us of the devil of crossroads, and several of the earliest monastic sites, though they preach the devil being at crossroads, like Glendalough, I was mentioning, Glenmacnoise, they actually put their monastic sites right on the crossroads because they're very good trading places. Now, everything. My system is freezing up. So give me a moment while I get this back in action again. Yeah, everything is freezing again. Sorry about that. Now, I see what's happening. There's an update that shouldn't be happening. So, okay, we'll fire ahead. Anyway, they, as I say, these monastic sites, they got to these crossroads to capture the best potential trading. And that also included having some kind of toll charge system for people to cross the crossroads. In the case of Clonmacnoise, it was charging for crossing the bridge as well. Now, the toll charges weren't with currency. Not many people were actually carrying, they weren't carrying metal currency, but they could pay by dropping off some of the supplies that they were traveling with, because that'd all be handy to the monastery, especially to support their scriptorium people. So that was the payment along the road. It could be some of the food, some of the hay, whatever they're taking to another place. Now, through folklore mythology, that also, this mythology of the crossroads, it went from here, it went from Western Europe over into North America. And that's believed to have actually happened thanks to church order motivation. And the crossroads certainly believed in parts of North America as being a place also to summon the presence of the devil in order to make a deal. But what a deal with the devil is, I'm not really sure about this. The church talk about this as a scaremongering thing, but we don't really seem to get any details for that in any way. Anyway, the basic seems to, it starts off the story of this folklore. It starts off with a mortal who wants to get greedy, really, to acquire more worldly goods for their own selfish gain, rather than be part of sharing and human equality. But in exchange for their desire of acquiring wealth and riches, they must give up their soul to the devil for eternity in exchange. So what they're really doing, the description of this, if you meet the devil at the crossroads, is you're trading your love for material or self-satisfying comforts. Now, the propaganda upon commercially successful people, especially by the commerce guilds, if we go back to late medieval time, the commerce guilds of the men that were connected to the church, they sort of had a moral connection to the church. You know, we're part of the church, we're extremely moral, so we can rip you off as much as we can. No problem there at all. And this was the formation of secret orders that predate the Masons. And of course, the most horrific example of the greed and acquisition of these church guild order men was the most horrific example in history. And I'm referring to the women that were branded as witches. Do I have any pictures on that? There we go. That's a very difficult to find something acceptable on the witches story. But there we have that there. And these witches people were described by these men that these women actually went off to the crossroads and they drew and scribed circles at the crossroads and then danced within them to summon up the devil to give them more power so that they can enchant and control the people at the will and desire of the devil. That's what these church guild people used to teach. And so that ended up, these women locally, there would have been the healers, counselors, the very go-to people in the community that were loved by the community and treasured by the community, because it was a bit like the district. No, I relate these women. They were like, I have to go to the district nurse once a week. And it's as if the role of the witch there was very much like the district nurse and beyond, because when I go to a district nurse here, she's quite into the alternatives. She starts putting witch hazel on me and manuka honey and colloidal silver. It's sort of, and there's various fermentations and brews that she might throw in as well. So that's a very modern equivalent. But then all this devil talk, it was by these men that were regarded as the pillars of society. And because they were the pillars of society and church guild people, it seemed that they enchanted local people to turn against their precious healing and caring women and support the hangings and burnings of them. I've got a long series on this, the alehouse wives. I'm going to go into that. I'm going to leave that for now, but we'll go into that in much more depth from, I think it's mid-August. And it will go right through October, that one. Anyway, I'm going to move on from that a wee bit. But there were local people who just didn't realize it was the guild men who had traded their souls and not the women that they were somehow blaming. Anyway, of course, these witch-branded women, they were often burned and hung at the crossroads too. And there are folklore stories around Europe that claim that if mystics draw anyone, the sort of mystic, if they drew and inscribed the circle at the local crossroads, they could summon the devil or a demon. And if they could offer a copper coin or even a copper nail, and they knew the correct chance to summon this demon character, if they knew the incantations, they believed that crossroads was the devil's space for hunting their prey. And it's part of this reason why Crossroads was also the site for hanging many criminals and was the burial place of criminals as well, and even people who committed suicide. I'm really on the dark stuff. I'm going to move from this very shortly, but it's just the sort of darker perception of the Crossroads, or we're going to cut right through now, because some of this crossroad folklore is stretched further to claim that if the coin and incantations were done by the mystical person at the point of new moon, if they returned again to the full moon, they can experience a reward. I think I've got a picture. I thought I had a picture of that. It doesn't seem to have come up. I'm losing my pictures. This is it? No, that's not a one. We got the witches there. This is them lighting up the circle, dancing with the witches. There we go. That's returning again the crossroads at full moon to experience the reward. Now, with this moon-guided extended ritual, it doesn't seem to process. It's different to actually trading with the devil. Sorry, I'm getting mixing my pictures up yet again. Right. But understanding the crossroads is not being a junction for human-built roads on Earth. This is the whole thing of the folklore. And some lay hunters, they like to ponder on that concept that these crossroads are powerful points and where the lays meet as well. Anyway, I'm going to leave that. I mean, this isn't a lay hunter thing, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm going to take a break, see what you're saying. We got Rinny from Springfield, I think, introduced. I haven't got any extra comments, but I see. Thank you for all the positive marks that you've been doing. Very great on that. And thank you for those who are actually watching along. That's great. As I say, this is it's a fairly long, and now we're going to nitty gritty of this echoes, because I'd like to move on to some of the traditions of other parts of the world, especially on the African continent. And these traditions have certainly, the African traditions, they've moved quite a bit around the earth. And this is especially, it seems to, the traditions I'm going to be talking about seem to have started up in countries that are now named the Congo and Angola. And these appear to be the first African countries to be attracted and converted to Christianity. The Portuguese were perhaps the most active at bringing Christianity to the African continent. And their start was the Congo, what's now the Congo and Angola. But these conversions, they didn't just, Portuguese didn't just land and, hi, everybody, get rid of your ways, we're going to make you Christian. It wasn't like that. The conversion started with the kings because they would offer the kings a deal they couldn't refuse, riches for the kings. Of course, the kings thought, oh, great, I'm going to have a lot more acquisitions because of these amazing whitish folk, etc., etc. So they were the first to convert to this Gospels and Psalms and this sort of new way of trading, like with the business guilds. And so they would then turn to their people and say, okay, followers, you brave, wise ones, we're going to follow Christianity. I think that's how it is. So the kings traded their souls first, and they would try to lure their tribe, their clan, to trade their souls to that new Christianity stuff as well. But unfortunately, as we know in the history, soon after the mass conversion to Christianity of these Congo and Angolan people, they were suddenly kidnapped and exported and sold as slaves. But their spirited gospel expression, even when they were taken as slaves, it traveled with them. Before the Christianization of these beautiful African souls, it seemed that they had very passionate beliefs related to the crossroads. And to them, the crossroads was a space that at specific times of the year, their physical world met the realm of their ancestors' world. And to them, the practice, they have the practice, you might have heard of it, hoodoo. And hoodoo was the practice of making this connection that we might call the veil during 4 points of the annual sun cycle. And the slaves, I think I've got a picture, very limited on that. This is kind of a lovely illustration of the meeting at the crossroads. I love that one. So certainly a meeting and honoring and gospeling and whatever they're doing at the crossroads. And here's the chart that they use, known as the Congo cosmogram. And when they got captured as slaves, they actually had these engraved on various items that they took with them. They'd have them on slabs like this. This is believed on the right to be cosmogram. And they would have just simple engravings on pots as well. So let's get to this. The Congo cosmogram is the charting of 4 points of the sun through different points of the year. I think I'll go back to that earlier picture to just give you another viewing of that. That's their charting there, if you can read some of it. Excuse me. And those points of the year being when the mystical Kalunga River, there's no way I got pictures of the Kalunga River, and you'll understand when I explain it if you don't know already. The Kalunga River is this mystical river that flows between our earth and our ancestral world. And this river makes a connection so that we can commune together again between the two worlds because of the connection of this flowing river. And that connection sustains wisdom. It passes wisdom down from the ancestors to revive and reinstate the wisdom that we have, and even share lost wisdom as well. And the heritage of hoodoo mythology did get combined with Christian education and became an incredible fusion of cultures and wisdom that it's quite remarkable, really, how their ancient wisdom did manage to fuse and create an incredible fusion with this Christianity that was taught to them in some form by the Portuguese, but by using their hoodoo heritage, they made it completely something else. And that's what brought us the sounds joys, and let's get the picture up to represent that, the sounds joys and the passions, no, it's not come up, of gospel music, all that passionate gospel music, the mesmerizing pentatonic chants that they bring into it. Very unique, of course, in Christianity. You wouldn't do that in mass, but this is the way they fuse it. And I think it's remarkable. I loved it when I was a child, when I first was exposed to this. But within this fusion of beliefs, these diverse Africans also carried the deep, passionate belief that at the crossroads, we can bathe within this mystical Kalunga River, and by doing so, witness the powers of God and emerge from the waters of the Kalunga totally baptized again. This is how they fused their hoodoo with the Christian baptism. To them, the baptism was through this mystical Kalunga River. Absolutely fascinating. I mean, I wish I could spend more time with you on this one. But they were saying that this combination, this fusion, was only possible during 4 times of the year, which conveniently forms a cross anyway, doesn't it? 4 times of the year when the Kalunga River flows between the earth and their ancestral, or our ancestral realms. And that causes me to think of some Irish waterfalls here that are dry a lot of the year round, and then suddenly they gush water again. If any of you have been to them, there's off the top of the head, I can think of Devil's Chimney Waterfall that's near Glencar, the famous Glencar waterfall, but it's not there. It's a little bit west of that. But it's dry most of the time, and then suddenly it gushes. It's quite dramatic, and it's actually known as the Devil's Chimney. How about that? And then another beautiful place are the waterfalls of the Glen Inchiquin Park in County Kerry, down there on the Beara Peninsula by the Jura Stone Circles. And again, there has to be rain, and when the rain and cloud hits the top of those hills, suddenly there's waterfalls gushing. And those are sort of physical things that remind me of this whole mythology of the Kalunga River. So this belief is that if we unconditionally accept the seasonal water of the Kalunga River, then we become spiritually renewed. And Kalungas, amazingly, is actually a name of a place. It's a place in central Brazil, and it's where remote tribes, there were slaves that were sent to Brazil. They escaped, and they formed communities in an area. They're quite remote, so their owners, I suppose, didn't retrieve them, and that's known as Kalungas. But from these tribes, the word Kalunga, it's also become translated not as a mystical river, but it seems to have twisted translation, become a translation as a description of hunter-gatherers rather than mystic river. And I think that's associated to these Brazilian tribes. That's how that translation got mixed up. Anyway, the mystical hoodoo culture of the Congo and Angola, it seemed to drift westwards into what's now Nigeria, Benin, Togo. But once it hit those countries, the culture changed into believing in the trickster at the crossroads. It wasn't this enlightenment of the Kalunga River. By the time it got to Nigeria, there was no mystical Kalunga River to baptize in. Suddenly, it was all about the crossroads with the trickster. And this obviously is where the scaremongering, fear-mongering of the Christianity perhaps came in. Maybe the Portuguese or the Spanish were a bit miffed about the fusion that was going on. Oh, okay, we're going to suck it to them hard. So there again, the Nigerians, etc., Benin, they believed in the trickster, a bit like the devil that resided at the crossroads. And one of the beliefs that when we sell our soul to the devil trickster, there's a difference. It wasn't like what I was saying about acquisition. When it was saying when these Nigerians and other Western African countries, their idea of selling their soul to the devil was not to acquire riches and wealth, but to acquire an exceptional skill that it was mesmerizing for them and for the people around them. And often this was the ability to play a musical instrument. And this was, here's a sort of a lovely drawing. A musician meeting the devil here at the crossroads. This is very much from the Nigerian culture. And by the influence of selling your soul to the devil, suddenly you open up your instrument and you'd let go and let the devil, let this trickster guide the fingers. And suddenly this magic comes out of your musical instrument with the chorus that they played, and whatever they played. Anyway, amazing music would come out. They don't understand how. And even in Scotland, they carry this tradition, this belief. Several pipers and fiddlers in Scotland believe that they learned to play the pipes and the fiddles just by gathering around at the crossroads and selling their soul to the spirit, the devil at the crossroads, which gave them their fingers to run and play these fiery tunes. Where did that come from? Very different to the acquisition of wealth. It's the acquisition of skill. I think that's a lovely twist on that. Actually, I'm not sure how accordion players, they don't seem to come into that story somehow. So I'm not sure the accordion story players, especially in Scotland. Anyway, it's this belief of selling our soul to the devil at the crossroads for the return of being skilled in this sudden muse and music, song, and poetry that was the origin of what evolved to become African American blues music. And as we know, the most famous of this, it seems perhaps was the origin, maybe the music and songs recorded by Robert Johnson. Here's Robert Johnson here. And the most famous of his is perhaps, what's it called? Crossroad Blues, of course. And by most people have probably heard Crossroad Blues from Eric Clapton and Cream well before Robert Johnson. But if you get to know Eric Clapton, he's very keen on Robert Johnson as being a main influence on him as well. Now, Crossroad Blues was one of a sequence of songs composed by Robert Johnson. Unfortunately, after Crossroad Blues, the experience of that, his songs got more bluesy, and not only bluesy, became actually more brutal as well in their content. And with Crossroad Blues, Robert is at the crossroads, he's hitching a ride, but nobody seems to notice him. It's as if he was invisible. So because he was invisible at the crossroads, he was locked into the crossroads because nobody would give him a ride. They just didn't see him. He couldn't hitch a ride to leave the crossroads. He was stuck there. And Robert Johnson's follow-up blues songs explained how he sold his soul with the devil. And by doing so, some awful things, he did some, if you follow the lyrics literally, it said that he did some awful things to some other human beings, especially women, which isn't a very nice subject to talk about. There he is at the crossroads with the devil there. But fortunately, the lyric experts claim that all he was doing with his lyrics was being symbolic. And it was symbolic of that raging passion of being stuck in the crossroads and coming out through the music, mastery of his music. He just didn't know where all this music was coming from. So it caused him to feel kind of bluesy. And in real life, Robert Johnson didn't harm anyone, and apparently was quite a gentleman with women, just something that came out in the lyrics. And folklorists also claim that Robert Johnson and his music evolved completely through what he didn't know at the time, but it was the mystical music gift of the hoodoo, the crossroads. And this evolved in the South, especially. The hoodoo became the Gothic voodoo variation which you might be more familiar with. Anyway, after his death, Robert Johnson's family rallied around to claim collectively that Robert had professional training from other musicians. And there was actually, and his family said that he was not influenced by ancestral hoodoo magic at all. It wasn't in his songs, wasn't in his music. He was just sort of classically trained. Anyway, I'm going to drift away from African-American crossroads culture, and I'm going to go back to the crossroads dancing in Leitrim. Well, really crossroads dancing through all of Ireland, and also in much of Gaelic Scotland as well. So let's see, any comments, any questions on that? I don't think I've been getting any more. You will be mesmerized by my devil talk. Anyway, no extra comments. I do feel busy because I noticed the likes and the love signs are all increasing, and the audience size is increasing. Anyway, let's go to Leitrim because it was great fun, because Leitrim has become very special for reviving the crossroads, tradition through recent years. This is where, and of course that's in the background there, as I'm going to be talking of that as well. Let's see if I can get some. There we go. Oh, there's Robert Johnson, his final resting place at the crossroads there, and there's the devil meeting him, the full moon at the crossroads as well. And then there we go, just bringing home being stuck in the crossroads, and that he was buried just beyond that tree there. Anyway, here we go. The annual crossroad dance here. Crossroad dance ahead, no through traffic, use the alternative route because you don't want to disturb what's going to be going on here. So the revival of the annual crossroads dance happened straight after the filming and production of the wonderful, quite intense but fascinating movie, Jimmy's Hall. And there's a Jimmy's Hall photo. That's where if you've seen the movie, you'll know what that scene is. I'm not going to talk about that now. But the film, it was based on Jimmy Grafton's life in Effingham village. There's the signpost there, birthplace of Jimmy Grafton. It's not far from Sheemore, the Fairy Hill Sheemore. Now, the movie story, it was based during the time when Ireland was on the brink of civil war. I'm going to make sure I've got the different... right, okay. Yeah, and I'm not going to go into the political life of Jimmy Grafton. It's actually full of tension, controversy, and I'd get on to a debate that's way off the subject. We're talking about the crossroads here. And at the base of Jimmy's belief was that he was a devoted communist and an atheist. And of course, that wouldn't go down well with the politics of Ireland at that time, and certainly not with the church. But some of his deeds through being a communist and atheist put him into very tense conflict with the Irish government, the Catholic Church. And Jimmy did actually emigrate from Leitrim when he was a young lad. He went off to New York. While he was in New York, he did become a USA citizen, even though he was an active underground communist there. But Jimmy actually returned back to Leitrim. I forget the date, but it happened after the death of his brother, Charlie, who looked after the family farm, and his parents couldn't look after the farm. I think they were disabled. They needed care anyway. So Jimmy needed to come back, not only to care for the farm, but also to care for his parents as well. But even coming back from the USA, back to Leitrim, part of his political agenda, even back in Leitrim, was to encourage community and education within the community. That was his goal. He wanted to bring in education that wasn't ruled by religion and state. He wanted to have education that was of the people, for the people. And as well as running the family farm, Jimmy had time somehow, with support of locals, to open the closed village social hall. It closed down. The church, I suppose, had closed it down because of being a sinful place for social activity, music, dancing, all of that stuff, especially inviting the old devil along. So he got this hall reopened and hosted free social and educational events. And these events did include Jimmy's socialist and community views, talks, of course, and discussions. But by doing this, increasingly agitated the church and local politicians. And the agitation actually increased when the local people actually supported Jimmy's Hall much more than going to mass and attending state education. And the events within this Ephrata Hall and outside on lovely summer days as well, there were things being taught from traditional crafts being revived, such as willow weaving, wool weaving, stuff like that. But perhaps more important, as far as Jimmy's agenda was culture classes in restoring and sustaining the traditions of language, the local stories, making sure they don't die, the local dances, increasing the local musicianship, and retaining the songs. Just bringing the whole Gaelic culture, making sure it's not lost, it's still contained in the village, still very much community, which the government, the centre state, and the church have always been trying to whittle down. Again, another subject. But he wanted a free place where the local people could come and feel safe to learn, to argue, to dream, to dance, enjoy the music, and have fun, and regard that as being their community. Didn't want it all to be somber. It was educational, but it was about community. It was about having fun. And but this, the other thing, of course, everything that went inside this, what they call Jimmy's Hall, nothing there was church or state commanded. And of course, the activities that were reborn from the education in the hall included coming together for dancing at the crossroads, had to be part of it. So let's bring in some dancing at the crossroads in Jimmy's Hall time. And that's me. I think that's me bringing that's me bringing the picture background forward. And this combined with the music, songs, and dance. And of course, the church priests, absolutely horrified by this, and the politicians, local politicians too, and maybe even the local corporate brewers, because there would have been this undercover local brewing in the area as well. So the Dublin brewers would be really upset and that type of thing. But of course, the mass and also the local politicians tried to convince the community, the local people, that through joining in the events at Jimmy's Hall, they were actually performing and dancing with the devil. But the participants, they loved being part of a free community, feeling safe behind the walls of the hall, away from all this mass and MP stuff. And they actually became confident about that. And they learned confidence in their language, their dance, their music, and the stories. And especially in the summer, when this would all come together in the spirit of the Ephrata crossroads as well. But sadly, the pressure with the church and the state, it became like the old church guild propaganda they mentioned that brainwashed communities to believing that their local wise women were actually witches that were summoning the bad, evil devil. And people believed this stuff in the late medieval times. And so the church thought they could do the same thing in the 1930s, the church, or 20s, wasn't it? And the church and the state people could spread stories amongst the community that Jimmy's Hall was a den of prostitution, brainwashing of communism. But this time, their propaganda, it didn't work like the old witches' propaganda did. So the local people knew what was best for them. They knew what was best to sustain them as a community. So in desperation and revenge, unfortunately, because they couldn't get the community on their side, the hall in Ephrata was burnt down. And by whom? Who burnt it down? It's not completely sure. Church denies that they did it. Anyway, it's quite a debate, and it's a political hot potato even today, so I'm not going there. But Jimmy Broughton, who was back to being an Irish citizen because of his need to work on the family farm and from all what he's doing with the community, He devoted himself to the farm, the culture, the community, and all the well-being of County Leitrim. And he actually became the only Irish citizen that was deported from Ireland because there was a fear that what he had achieved in Leitrim, in Efrina, that this culture and spirit that was seeded in Jimmy's Hall and would spread through Leitrim and spread through Ireland, and by doing so would topple the church and topple the state, which was in a fragile position, as I say, verge of civil war at the time. There was a fear that this influence would bring about communities everywhere and bring together the whole country. That was the last thing that was wanted. So it was like the old billy trees, burn it down. But in Leitrim, the Jimmy's Hall movie, it was they finished it. I think it was a wrap in 2014, or perhaps that's when the film came out. There's actually been dancing at the crossroads there every bonfire night, which is the eve of St. John's Day, which is Ireland. St. John's Day is the 24th of June, so the eve is the 23rd of June on the night. I think I better get some pictures up of this. Let's see. This is actually, this is Jimmy Galton. This is well, if you can read that, there's a park where his hall was burned down. It's a kind of remembrance park, and that's the stone that's within that. But anyway, there you go. That's well, that's this year actually. Took that photo this year. The bonfire there, which is actually wood. And it was on the 22nd of June this year because it was actually awful rainy evening on the 23rd. We saw the forecast. Everyone saw the forecast. And those that were organizing it, they said, right, everybody turn up on the 22nd this year. And I'm glad they did. So let's see what comments you've got on that. We've got people still journeying. Hello and full moon blessings from Andrea Rosewood, Hin from Florida. And go left, nothing's right. Go right, nothing's left. Right, okay. I'm glad you're here, Andrea. Wonderful. So let's give this a roundup because I've nearly been on an hour. Let's give a few moments to actually consider the devil for now. How do we vision the devil? Head with horns, scaly skin, long tongue, webbed feet. Maybe it's got claws on the feet, a tail with an arrowhead shape, and maybe the devil breathes out fire. Or you may vision the devil as being someone like Toby, if you remember Rowan Atkinson and his skit. But think of those physical features that we imagine of the devil. Maybe the flame throwing is the exception, but all those features, aren't they all parts of animals and reptiles that we know and understand as having very useful living roles within our biodiverse living network? I think by my voice, you know, I've been on for an hour. I'll try and hold the voice together anyway. Now, the very network that the church may teach as being created at the hands of God is all there in the devil. So what's this human fear of the devil? Now, that's a debate that's well beyond nature echoes, and I think it's one thing I think that stands out is the attempted fear, the denial, and the separation that is taught, you know, separate us, divide us from the rest of nature. And I think that's what the sort of devil represents. Don't you dare go near the devil because you'll believe in nature and the flow of nature more than we offer the solutions in the church and with government and with corporations. I've talked on previous Nature Echoes and Nature Folklore episodes about this anyway. I've talked about the ancestral beliefs in deities and spirits, the ancient beliefs of all the deities and spirits living in trees, in water. And then religions came along and persuaded people to replace those deities with a focus on worshipping the past saints, which regarded as being at the Holy Wells. Of course, we have Patrick Wells and Bridget Wells and all that. That's only because the church enforced these saints to believe in those rather than the deities. Same with the trees, but that's more, as I mentioned, in Kurdish tradition. So, but I'll try and hold on to this. Anyway, I think by worshipping the saints, I really am losing this. I apologize. But I think by worshipping the saints, we're worshipping the ghosts of the elite, rather than worshipping or honoring the life that made us, brought us into this earth, and guided us. So this Zephyrin at Crossroads, just after the Midsummer solstice, I think most of us did actually feel a very special presence. And it was not a presence of religion. It certainly wasn't the devil. And it was not state or corporate sponsorship there. It was of people, of community arriving and parking. They were arriving in all kinds of directions. Let's get a picture up here. And everyone was kind and helpful to each other. And very much one with the fun, the music, the songs, and the dance. And all of this was us becoming more united and spirited. And the short nights, all this happening before the short nights become darker. Wonderful stuff here. And the question is, did that Midsummer event summon up the devil? Well, maybe, because it was all very natural and connected, and no harm came to anyone. There would have been more lasting, beautiful, calming memories as well that would have been taken home by people. Much more fun from this than perhaps, people would take home memories and remember there's much more than what they would take home from the following Sunday Mass. And I think Jimmy Groton would have been very, very proud. And another thing at Crossroads is you get the well at the Crossroads too, and the pump well. And there's the pump well from Effingham as well. So thank you so much to Edwina Gukian, who in a way lives very much a duplicated life there as well from Jimmy. And also John Cronog, that was John Cronog back there. There he is, that's with his granddaughter there. And he's very much part of this. And thank you, Edwina and John, for being, and the other conductors here that were caused this event to flow. And I think that's all the pictures I've got. So thank you very much for that. Any more comments? And Esley says it's been quite a masterclass. No, he didn't say that. That's it. Masterclass. Thank you for this incredible segment. Thank you, Esley. Thank you for enjoying that. The Substack stuff I'm doing. Last week I did post a 3-chapter module on Holly-related prompts. I hope that those of you who are subscribers are making use of that and finding that very useful. I enjoyed putting that together. I am behind with the next module. That should be out already again, but I'll complete it as soon as possible. This summer, we do have visitors here at Liechtenstein, and that's a lovely distraction to have anyway. Also, the free articles have been on postponement whilst I get these modules sorted, but there's a lovely series. It's a long series starting up as soon as possible. It's going to be the first harvest series. That's going to be quite a long one over several weeks, and I'm going to start off by commencing with the folklore of Bilberry Sunday. I love the Bilberry Sunday traditions, and guess what? Our local Edwina Gukian is getting the entire Leitrim County up and running into action to revive the Bilberry Sunday tradition. So I'm going to talk more about that from next week, I'm sure, during next Sunday's Nature Echoes. Any other comments going on here before you're all gone? Well, thank you for watching Nature Echoes. You might be watching this as the archive. If you enjoy what we share and through the Nature Folklore channels, please consider subscribing. There you are there. A reminder that again, there's the free subscription tier. You get access to at least 40 informative nature folklore articles, at least written per year. But if you upgrade to the support tier, this includes my journaling nature folklore course, which amazingly people are complaining I'm charging too little for it. Anyway, my nature folklore journaling nature folklore course includes 20 course modules per year, and you can join at any time because it's a revolving course, not a linear one. And each year I'm adding to it. You get the latest updates. So there's always something new to add to your folklore connection. And I'm going to try and get the 4 seasonal online live workshops going a year. Cost is €5 a month for the upgrade, including the course, or you can go for 50% discount by paying €30 a month. That gives you the year for €30. So thank you for your support, subscribers, which pays for the stuff so I can do this broadcast on Sundays. And so what else have I got? Coming up next Sunday, Nature Echoes. There was some, I've already been thinking about that, and I'm trying to think what I was thinking about. That there was something that came up as an Echo News. I thought, oh, I've got to include that next week. Totally forgot what it is. Oh, Lord, it's something that happened. Anyway, it's a nice surprise. I will think of it by the end of the show. Any more questions, comments before I go? I've enjoyed this evening sharing this, again, fairly deep nature echoes. The last 2 weeks have been pretty deep, haven't they? And if you're watching this as the replay, keep posting your comments and questions. I will come back and answer them and reply to what you post. If you're on YouTube, there's a bell icon that will remind you what's on the Nature Echoes next the following week. So it's for me now to wish you a wonderful, safe week. Not awake. Hope you don't have a week, but stay awake, of course. But wishing you a safe week full of wonder, inspirations, enchantment that really does come from the presence of waterwoods, mysteries of nature, especially if you're in the middle of a crossroads. So until next Sunday, I wish you a wonderful, blessed week. And I think that's all I got. So thank you all. Thank you all for supporting this. And bye-bye to you all. See you next Sunday. Bye.